They skipped my wedding to go on a beach vacation with my brother, and then had the audacity to stop repaying the $25,000 I loaned them. When I confronted them, they called it a gift and told me I was at the bottom. That's when I stopped begging for respect and sent them a legal demand letter. What followed shattered every illusion I had about family. You won't believe how far they went once I finally said no. My wedding day should have been ideal, and I'm Emily, 29. Despite coming from a humble upbringing, I had developed a lucrative nursing job and fallen in love with David. However, my parents' first row seats were empty as I made my way down the aisle. Instead, they had decided to take a trip to Hawaii with my brother's family. My father had remarked, "It's just a trivial event for someone at the bottom." That was the most painful thing until they phoned about unpaid loan installments a month after my wedding. All of a sudden, the money I had given them years prior was important once more. If you've ever felt like you were struggling for recognition in your own family, please press the subscribe button and let me know where you're viewing from in the comments section before I reveal what occurred next. I always had the impression that our family, which was raised in a middle-class area of Grand Rapids, Michigan, had an unwritten hierarchy. My parents, John and Susan Parker, have always made it clear that they prefer my older brother, Michael. When he declared that he would follow in our father's footsteps and get a business degree, he immediately became their golden child. Michael achieved academic success, earned a corporate position at a Fortune 500 business, and graduated from a renowned institution. By the age of 30, he had wed Ashley, a woman my parents loved because of her family history and social ties. My parents' ideal family picture was completed in 3 years with the arrival of Olivia and Noah, 2 ideal children. In contrast, my interest in healthcare was sparked by my high school volunteer work at a nearby hospital. I found meaning in the relationships I had with patients and the real impact I could have on their lives. It was evident that my father was disappointed when I told him that I had chosen to become a nurse rather than a businessman. A nurse? He sneered. Changing bedpans was a waste of all that potential. Emily, you might be managing businesses. More subtly, but just as dismissively, was my mother. She sighed and added, I guess it's a respectable job. However, you've consistently settled for less than what you could accomplish. During milestone events, the disparity in their treatment of us became brutally apparent. They gave Michael a brand new automobile as a surprise for his 21st birthday. I was given a department shop gift card as my. They hosted a lavish dinner party to celebrate Michael's first promotion. They came to the ceremony when I graduated with honors from nursing school, but they departed right away because they had a barbecue in the neighborhood they couldn't miss. Our parents made a sizable down payment when Michael purchased his first home as a proper start in life. My mother advised that David and I live within our means and start with an apartment when we started looking at smaller homes. In spite of this, I remained close to my parents in the hopes that they would one day recognize my worth. I called frequently to check in, sent considerate gifts on holidays, and went in once a month for family dinners. I thought that despite of our differences, family was family. That belief was put to the test 3 years ago. In a panic, my parents called me. They were 3 months overdue on their mortgage and had made bad investment choices. The bank threatened to foreclose if they didn't provide the $25,000 right away. Michael has already been asked, my father clarified. But he just can't help right now because of the kids' new vacation home expenses and private school tuition. For years, I had been saving hard, accumulating a small nest egg that David and I believed would serve as a down payment for our home. We talked it out and I agreed to lend the money to my parents. As I sent the money, my mother assured me, we'll reimburse you $600 per month until the debt is settled. Because the sum was substantial, rather than because I didn't trust them, I insisted on having the arrangement in writing. My mother persuaded my father that it was reasonable, although he appeared irritated. I saved a copy of the straightforward contract we signed in my files. They made the payments on time for over 3 years. Every month, usually on the 5th or 6th, $600 showed up in my account. Helping them made me proud, and it appeared to strengthen our bond. My father used to seldom ever call me, but now he does so periodically just to talk. My parents showed a courteous but unenthusiastic interest in David and me when we first started dating. I loved David's kindness and compassion, but my parents didn't think much of him as a kindergarten teacher. A teacher? When I brought him up for the first time, my mother inquired. Well, someone has to do it, I guess. While helping out at a children's hospital reading program, David and I got to know one another. I was enthralled by his commitment to his students and his easygoing demeanor with kids. We became inseparable within a year, and I knew he was the one. My mother would often remind me, "Your brother married into the Wilson family. You know, Ashley's father plays golf with the governor." She omitted the fact that Michael and Ashley's relationship felt more like a business deal than a romantic one. They gave off the ideal impression on social media and at family get-togethers, but they hardly talked when I met them by themselves. In contrast, David and I could discuss anything and everything for hours on end. He gave me unwavering support for my profession, and I encouraged him as he created cutting-edge teaching strategies. Despite our lack of income, we were creating a life full of respect for one another and a sense of purpose. I was working in the pediatric ward on a Tuesday afternoon when David proposed. He'd worked with my coworkers and the kids, each of whom held hand-drawn signs that read, "Will you marry me?" When I arrived at the final patient room, David was kneeling in front of a group of happy kids and teary-eyed coworkers. It wasn't lavish or costly, but it was thoughtful, sincere, and focused on the profession we both loved, exactly like us. I called my parents that night in the hopes that they would be pleased for me. "Did he pop the question at the hospital?" With a tone of disdain, my mother inquired. "You know, during a private dinner with a string quartet at the Ritz-Carlton in Chicago, Michael proposed to Ashley." Nevertheless, I made an effort to include her in the planning. She said she had a standing bridge club appointment that couldn't be postponed, so I declined her invitation to go clothing shopping. Instead, I discovered my dress, a simple yet lovely A-line gown that felt like it was created for me, and my future mother-in-law, Karen, came and sobbed. "Have you thought of something more complex?" When I showed my mother the pictures, she inquired. Ashley's gown was a unique creation of the designer. To ensure she had the best, your brother spent a fortune. Every discussion of the wedding seems to return to the extravagant behavior of Michael and Ashley. With 300 guests, a 7-tier cake, and a reception at one of Detroit's most prestigious locations, their wedding had cost more than David and I had earned in a year. We were organizing a much smaller event, a reception for 70 people at a quaint local botanical garden, catered by a restaurant that we adored and was family-owned. Despite having a small budget, it was ideal for the small event we had in mind. Despite his occasional harmful input, my father was mostly absent from the planning process. He once said, "All this fuss over a single day, particularly for someone in your role. It's not as if family companies are being combined." I made an effort to ignore these remarks and concentrate on how happy I was to be married to David. 6 months before the event, we mailed out save-the-date cards. My parents texted me to confirm receipt, saying, "I got your card. We will review our schedule." Their answers remained evasive until formal invites were sent out over the course of several weeks. My mother used to reply, "We'll have to see. Your father has a lot of obligations right now." During a regular phone conversation 3 months prior to the wedding, my mother mentioned in passing that they were putting the finishing touches on plans for a family vacation to Hawaii. "What time are you leaving?" With a knot in my stomach, I asked. She answered, "The 2nd week of June. June 12th is my wedding date." Oh no, I must have misread the dates. Now, however, it is too late to make a difference. The kids are thrilled that Michael has already planned time off. Don't you understand? I didn't. Absolutely not. I made a straight call to my father that night. "Mom claims you have a trip planned for the weekend of my wedding, Dad. There must be an error." "There is no miscommunication," he stated icily. "This trip has cost us a lot of money. In Hawaii, Michael has significant business contacts. For him, this can be a big opportunity. More important than the wedding of your daughter? My voice broke as I asked. I would think about his response for months. It's really a minor incident for a person at the bottom. Please don't worry us. The phone almost fell out of my grasp. The bottom, I muttered. What's the bottom of? He answered, you understand what I mean. David and you. Your positions. This is only a tiny wedding for a kindergarten teacher and a nurse. It's not like it's a significant social or professional event. With tears running down my cheeks, I hung up. I was cuddled up on the couch when David got home. I was crying so hard that I could hardly talk. Your income and job title don't define your value, he shouted angrily as he held me tight. Additionally, our wedding is significant because our love is significant. They will suffer a great loss if they are unable to see that. His remarks were beneficial. However, my father's dismissal caused me great pain. I had worked my entire life to gain their love, respect, and acceptance. I now had to confront the idea that my efforts might never be sufficient. Michael wasn't my second best friend. I was at the bottom. David and I decided that evening that we would go ahead with our wedding as scheduled, whether or not my parents were present. Being surrounded by individuals who cared about us, not our careers or social standing, but us, we would celebrate our love. I woke up the morning of my wedding with a fresh hope that my parents might change their minds. It was a little but palpable desire. That they would alter their plans after realizing how much they would miss their daughter's wedding. I slept with that hope a bit lessened every night. I was thankful for the distraction of last-minute minutiae and immersed myself into final preparations. Karen and Mark, my future in-laws, took on roles I never would have imagined. From verifying vendors to putting together welcome items for guests from out of town, they assisted with everything. As we wrote place cards one evening, Karen exclaimed, "We're gaining a daughter, not just a daughter-in-law, and we couldn't be happier about that." Her generosity brought me to tears, which was common back then. Her complete acceptance stood in stark contrast to my own parents' rejection, which was extremely traumatic. Sarah, my best friend, turned become my toughest defender. She had known me since college and had seen how I had battled my parents' favoritism throughout my life. When I showed her my mother's text confirming they were heading to Hawaii, she said, "They don't deserve you." Never have they. A big bouquet showed up at our flat 2 days prior to the wedding. For one breathtaking moment, I believed it might be an apology or possibly a peace gesture from my parents. Rather, the card said, "To our glorious fall. It gives us great pleasure to formally welcome you into our family. With all of our affection, Mark and Karen." I got up early the morning of my wedding. As David bid me farewell and went to his parents' house to get dressed with his groomsmen, June's sunshine came through the bedroom window. He murmured, "You'll be walking down the aisle the next time I see you." Despite the voids in my heart, Sarah came with brunch and champagne, trying to make the day memorable. As we performed our hair and makeup, my bridesmaids' friends from nursing school and hospital coworkers created a supportive and loving environment around me. My colleague Jennifer replied, "I brought something," and she took a tiny blue box out of her purse. "I am aware that you said you did not have something borrowed." There was a thin silver bracelet inside. "It belonged to my grandmother," Jennifer clarified. She also worked as a nurse throughout World War II and consistently emphasized that nursing was a calling rather than merely a career. It was only responded to by the most resilient and caring individuals. "She would have loved you very much." What I needed to hear was right there. I put the bracelet on my wrist, finding strength in the bond with another nurse who, although my own parents were never able to, had recognized the importance of the work I did. Everything at the botanical garden was lovely. The aisle was lined with wildflowers in gentle shades of purple and blue. Guests were seated as a string quartet performed softly. David's father Mark found me just before the wedding started. "Emily," he added softly, "if you would like, I would be delighted to lead you down the aisle. You can also walk by yourself. Whatever you feel is appropriate." I still held on to the hope that my father would show up at the last minute, so I hadn't prepared for either scenario. But after glancing into Mark's gentle eyes, I decided. I told him, I think I have to do this myself. However, would Karen and you take the front row seats, which were intended for my parents? His eyes were glistening as he continued, we would be honored. I started my solo walk down the aisle as the music changed and the guests stood up. I was afraid that without my father by my side, this moment would feel unfinished. Instead, though, I experienced an unexpected sense of empowerment. Every action was a decision. A statement that I was enough, just the way I was. When I finally got to David and saw the pride and love in his eyes, I knew for sure that I belonged there. Intimate, heartfelt, and centered on our commitment to one another, the ceremony was everything we could have imagined. We penned our own vows, pledging to establish a house built on kindness and love. I experienced a deep sense of calm as we exchanged rings. Now we were building our own family, one based on sincere concern and respect for one another. Mark and I performed the father-daughter dance during the reception. I muttered, "Thank you for being here." He answered, "Thank you for being the daughter we always wanted." Alex, one of my coworkers, offered to take our wedding photos, and James, his boyfriend, offered to make the wedding film. They caught the love, laughing, and happiness that pervaded the garden throughout the evening. I was completely present with everyone who had chosen to be there for us as we cut our cake and danced for the first time. I didn't make the mistake of checking my phone until the following morning, just before David and I were about to depart for our honeymoon in Maine. A number of videos from their trip to Hawaii were posted on my mother's Instagram feed. The caption for a sunset beach photo of my parents, Michael, Ashley, and their kids making a sandcastle said, "Perfect family vacation." Even worse were the remarks. One acquaintance had written, "There's nothing better than having the entire family together." In response, my mother said, "Definitely." Like salt on an open wound, the words hurt. In addition to deciding not to attend my wedding, they were openly acting as like I wasn't even related. David removed the phone from my grasp with gentleness. He proposed, "Let's turn these off for the honeymoon. They don't currently deserve a place in our happiness." He was correct. I disabled all social media notifications for my family and concentrated on starting our married life. Even though the agony persisted, I resisted allowing it to eclipse our lovely vow to one another. Our Maine seaside honeymoon turned into a haven. We spent the mornings viewing the sunrise and the evenings having peaceful discussions about our future at a little bed and breakfast with a view of the Atlantic. I started to recover away from the chaos of daily life and the hurt of rejection. What if this turns out to be a disguised benefit? One evening as we strolled down the shore, David asked, "Your parents have demonstrated their true selves to you. No more delusions. Don't hold out hope that they'll change overnight." His remark struck a profound chord. I had been pursuing approval for years, but it would never materialize. I had been using their standards to gauge my value and had consistently found myself wanting. Maybe I could finally quit that unachievable race today. We went back to our flat, which is now formally our shared residence, and started establishing our married life. We created new customs and routines. Sunday morning pancakes were one of our small but special customs. Board games on Wednesday nights. Every month, we take day trips to explore neighboring towns. I deliberately chose to spend less time with my parents. I stopped contacting them, but I didn't ban their numbers or stop talking to them completely. No more calls every week. No more asking for their opinions. No more frantic attempts to share my life with unworthy individuals. I began visiting a therapist at Sarah's recommendation. I was able to process not only the wedding rejection, but also a lifetime of subtle and not-so-subtle messages that had undermined my self-esteem during our sessions with Dr. Laura, who specialized in family trauma. During one of our first meetings, Dr. Laura clarified that what your parents did was emotional desertion. And based on what you've said, it fits into a pattern that you've had all your life. As I worked with her, I realized how much their partiality had impacted me. I had come to believe that I was less important than my brother and hence deserving of less affection and care. Everything, including my professional decisions and interpersonal interactions, had been impacted by that idea. Dr. Laura replied softly, "You've spent your life trying to earn love that should have been freely given. You didn't fail there. They own it." Unexpectedly, David found solace in his family. Karen called often, just to check in, not to judge or pry. I was always smiling when Mark texted me amusing dad jokes. They invited us to family get-togethers because they truly wanted us there, not because they had to. Another vital support system was my hospital coworkers, many of whom had been at the wedding. A month or so after I got back from our honeymoon, Linda, the chief nursing officer, drew me aside. She told me, "I've been observing your work for years. Your clinical expertise is outstanding, but what really makes you stand out is your compassion. I would like your assistance in developing a new patient advocacy program that we are developing." The timing of that vote of confidence was perfect. Although the position would include more responsibility and training, it also provided a career route I hadn't previously thought of. On my own terms, I found fulfillment and purpose in enhancing patient care systems, so I poured myself into the task. I periodically received details about my family through my cousin Megan, the only relative on my side to have attended our wedding. She claimed that Michael's company was reportedly having some difficulties. The specifics were hazy. Due to financial constraints, my parents had canceled their yearly winter vacation to Florida. They did not provide any of this information directly. I discovered something strange 6 weeks after our wedding. My parents' monthly loan payment was missing from my account. I chose to disregard it at first, considering everything that had transpired. It might have been a mistake. Or maybe it was their small-minded way of retaliating against me for marrying someone else. I sent a quick, professional email after the second payment date passed without a deposit. I saw that the loan installments for June and July were not made. "Tell me when I may anticipate them, please." Neither that email nor a comparable follow-up that I sent a week later received a response. My mother's social media accounts continued to be active in the meanwhile, with frequent updates about weekend excursions and family dinners that consistently highlighted Michael, Ashley, and their kids. No recognition of my presence at all. Or the unpaid invoices. Without allowing these persistent rejections to rekindle previous wounds, Dr. Laura assisted me in processing them. She reminded me that their behavior says everything about them and nothing about you. What part they play in your life going forward is up to you. I concentrated on creating our future with David. We started looking for a small house where we could ultimately raise a family. We talked about adoption and foster care because we were both interested in giving needy kids a loving home. One evening, I informed him, "We understand what it's like to be unwelcome. Perhaps that knowledge makes us the ideal parents for children who have gone through the same thing." Tears filled David's eyes. He said, "You're going to be a fantastic mother. The type who ensures her kids never question their love." I adapted to a new normal as summer gave way to fall. Not only was life easier to handle without my parents' continual presence, but it was also, in many respects, more tranquil. I stopped measuring my accomplishments against my brothers and stopped bracing myself for judgment with every phone call. I was gaining the ability to view myself both from my own perspective and that of others who genuinely valued me. My father then called precisely 1 month after our wedding. After being silent for weeks, seeing his name on my phone screen made my heart race. I nearly didn't respond. However, curiosity prevailed. "Hey," I spoke carefully. "Emily," my father said in a sharp, businesslike tone. "I'm calling in reference to the deposits." For a time, I was perplexed. "Deposits?" He answered impatiently, "Yes. You haven't sent us any deposits in the last 2 months. The bank confirmed that there hasn't been any action. Is there something wrong that we should be aware of?" The insight struck me like a blow to the body. Their missed loan installments were not the reason for his contact. He called because, in some way, he thought I was going to give them money. "Dad," I began softly, "I believe there was a miscommunication. It's not the other way around. You and Mom owe me money. 3 years ago, I gave you a $25,000 loan. Up until recently, you were paying $600 every month. There was a pause in the line. Next. Emily, that was a gift. We are your parents. Families support one another without keeping score. My hand gripped the phone more tightly. It wasn't a present. A loan arrangement was signed by us. I've written it down. On a technicality, he said. Look, you must begin making contributions to the family fund. We are assisting Michael in keeping his firm viable during a difficult time. You should be doing your share as a sister. It was breathtakingly audacious. I tried to maintain my composure as I said, let me get this straight. You haven't spoken to me in more than a month, stopped paying me the money you legally owe me, skipped my wedding to go on vacation with Michael, and now you're calling to demand that I give you more money to help my brother? My father remarked icily, don't be theatrical. This has to do with family duty. Michael needs to provide for his kids. I retorted, and I have a life to build, a life you've made it clear you don't respect or value. He emphasized, this isn't about respect. It has to do with pragmatic issues. Michael requires. I surprised myself by interrupting, I don't care what Michael needs. The $25,000 you borrowed from me and agreed to pay back is important to me. Instead of being viewed as an ATM from which Michael may take money whenever he has issues, I want to be regarded like a member of this family. His voice became stern. Emily, I am disappointed in you. This self-centered mindset is not how you were brought up. No, I concurred. You instilled in me the idea that my brother was more significant and precious than I was. At the base, that is no longer acceptable to me. My hands shaking, I hung up before he could answer. My phone started ringing again in a matter of minutes. It was my mom this time. I answered against my better judgment. Without introducing herself, she said, how dare you speak to your father that way? What specifically have you done for me, Mom, after all that we've done for you? Quietly, I inquired. Her voice rose as she remarked, we brought you up, taught you, and encouraged your choices, even when we didn't agree with them. And now you abandon us when your family needs you? As if you abandoned me by not attending my wedding? That was unique, she emphasized. I made the point that we had prior commitments to a vacation that could have been scheduled any other week of the year. She let out a loud sigh. You must look at the wider picture in the fall. Michael is having severe financial problems. There is a downsizing at his workplace. He could be fired. They've already had to terminate Olivia's membership in the country club and remove her from private school. They are in pain. My family's definition of suffering had always been instructive. That was a problem, and Michael might have to live like an ordinary person rather than a privileged one. One thing they needed my money for? She reiterated what my father had said, saying, family supports family. Apparently, except when that family member is me. That's unfair, my mom said. You and Michael have always been treated equally by us. The flagrant lie was the last straw. I have to leave, Mom. Please let Dad know that, in accordance with our written agreement, I expect the loan installments to start up right away. I'll have to think about alternative choices if I don't get the past due amounts within 2 weeks. Are you putting us in danger? With astonishment, she inquired. I corrected, I'm setting boundaries. An action I ought to have taken years ago. I immediately went to our home office after hanging up and took out the loan agreement. It was unmistakable and explicit, both of my parents' signatures. Dated. There is no indication that the money was a gift anywhere. I emailed the document to them both along with a brief comment after scanning it. This is the loan agreement that we all signed in accordance with our conversation. Within 14 days, please bring the account up to date. My email was overflowing in a matter of hours. In a blunt statement, my father asserted that the arrangement was not legally enforceable. A longer, more heartfelt plea about difficult times and family loyalty was sent by my mother. Most unexpectedly, my brother Michael texted me, the first time I've heard from him directly in months. I've heard that you're criticizing your parents about money. Not cool, sis. Right now, we're all having difficulties. I wrote and retracted a number of answers before deciding on. This relates to a debt I made to our parents 3 years ago, and it is between us. You are not involved in it. His response was prompt. Everything in this family affects each and every one of us. Right now, Mom and Dad are helping me out with their retirement funds. You're depriving my children of food if you make them pay you. If it weren't so upsetting, the manipulation would have been hilarious, because it was so obvious. The home where Michael and Ashley resided was valued at more than $1 million. They were hardly in danger of starvation, even without the costs of a private school and a country club. My mother called again before I could answer. Her tone had changed from one of guilt to one of compromise this time. "We've been thinking," she said in a sweet voice. "We might be able to reach an agreement. What if we temporarily lower the monthly installments until Michael is able to support himself again?" "The loan terms have already been decided," I answered. "I refuse to renegotiate them. But you can see that right now, helping your brother is a priority." I informed her that my financial stability and the future I'm creating with David were my top priorities. Michael and his family are obviously your top priorities. Both of us have made our decisions. Her tone shifted once again after a pause. "Your father believes we ought to investigate if you forced us to sign that contract. We were forced to deal with foreclosure. A competent attorney might declare the contract void." I laughed out at how unexpected the threat was. "Are you really saying that I made you take $25,000 from me for nothing? Go ahead and present that argument in court, please. Please let me know how it goes." My mother accused me. "You've changed, Emily. You were so kind and understanding once." "I matured," I declared. "And as I watched you feed Michael the entire meal, I stopped taking little bits of attention." My mother concluded the talk by implying that David was the cause of my recent attitude, another diversion, another failure to accept accountability. As I hung up, I came to a significant realization. I was not heartbroken by my parents' disapproval for the first time in my life. Yes, I was furious, but with a clear eye too, and determined. I told David everything that evening. He was steadfast in his support. "You know what's the most absurd thing about it?" I informed him. "They honestly think I owe them this sum of money. That my responsibility to the family is to assist them financially, even if I take emotional abuse in exchange." David noted, "Because that arrangement works for them. The only reason they're angry is that you're upsetting a system that has helped them for years." My brother's wife, Ashley, texted me the following day. "With this loan transaction, you're placing us in an impossible situation. If the public learns of this, the family's reputation may suffer. Consider your nephew and niece." The last piece of manipulation was the reference to Olivia and Noah, kids I hardly knew because Michael and Ashley hardly ever involved me in their lives. I didn't respond to it in a dignified manner. I phoned a lawyer instead. It was time to make sure my family had no choice but to cease wishing they would act morally. I offered to help prevent foreclosure. They agreed. Jessica reassured me, "That's a family member offering support during a financial emergency, not duress." Their comprehension that this was a loan with payback obligations is further supported by the fact that they have been making consistent payments for almost 3 years. Her assurance was comforting. "So, what would you suggest?" I inquired. "I propose that we begin with a formal demand letter in light of the family dynamics you have detailed. It creates a record and shows that you are committed to getting the money back. That frequently suffices to get money without the need for additional legal action." I nodded, experiencing an odd mixture of resolution and melancholy. What if they don't reply? The following actions are then discussed, and depending on your preferences, they may involve civil litigation or small claims court. However, let's begin with the letter and observe the outcome. I gave my approval to the demand letter's final draft 2 days later, outlining the loan terms, pointing out the late payments, and asking that the account be brought current within 30 days to prevent more legal action were all done in a clear and professional manner. Before being sent by certified mail, Jessica's assistant notarized the letter, which needed to be signed when it arrived. Money was no longer the only factor in this. It has to do with limits, about not letting yourself be controlled or ignored. I concentrated on the aspects of my life that made me happy and fulfilled as I awaited a response. After more searching, David and I discovered a prospective 3-bedroom cottage in a community with top-notch schools. I was assisting in the leadership of a patient advocacy program at work, and it was growing. Because of our early success, the hospital administration had started to provide more resources. My dad and other family members I hardly ever spoke to started texting and calling me 3 days after the demand letter was sent. "Aunt Carol, Aunt, your letter has really crushed Susan. What sort of daughter would hire a lawyer to take on her parents? Uncle, your father contributed to the cost of your nursing education. How could you be so unappreciative? Ryan's cousin. The entire family is discussing this. Everyone is embarrassed by it." I ignored all of these communications because I knew they were nothing more than flying monkeys trying to force me back into the system that had always worked for someone else. I was cautioned by Dr. Laura that this could occur. Those who profited from the previous system will make a concerted effort to entice you back into it once you shift the dynamic by establishing boundaries, she said. You are not responsible for resolving their distress. Ashley gave me a call 1 week after the letter was sent. We usually only spoke through group texts or at required events, so this was out of the ordinary. "We must discuss this matter," she said, her voice tense with restrained rage. "Are you aware of the harm you're inflicting to the reputation of your family?" "Which member of my family is it?" I inquired. "The part that expected me to pay for my brother's lifestyle, or the part that skipped my wedding to go on vacation?" "Stop being petty," she yelled. "Michael and I have social responsibilities and a role to uphold. You clearly don't grasp that, but your parents do." "You're right," I murmured, startling her into a brief pause. "I find it incomprehensible to put social standing ahead of fundamental decency and integrity. I find it incomprehensible to skip a daughter's wedding in favor of a beach holiday. Furthermore, I find it incomprehensible to borrow money with no plans to repay it." "There was no mention of not repaying it," Ashley retorted. "Your parents are helping us, so they simply need flexibility right now." "And what's wrong with me?" She let out a loud sigh. "Because, Emily, we are family. Family members look out for one another." "Exactly," I replied. "So, when do you intend to look after me? When will any of you care about my needs?" Ashley paused for a long moment before her voice became icy. "You have a chip on your shoulder," I used to tell Michael. "This demonstrates it. This family is being destroyed by your jealousy." "No," I informed her. "That was long ago due to your entitlement and my parents' partiality. This is the first time I've acknowledged it." I ended the call and sent Jessica all of the messages. She suggested keeping a record of everything while avoiding direct interaction. She advised, "Let the legal system do its job. Emotional disputes only serve to obscure the problem." My father finally replied to the demand letter 2 weeks later, but it was to Jessica rather than to me. Indignation and ambiguous threats regarding family matters that should remain private and potential consequences to Emily's inheritance were mixed together in his email. Jessica sent me the message along with the following note. "In fact, this makes us stronger. He is merely attempting to exert pressure on you using other channels. He is not disputing the existence of the debt." My mother, meantime, started a more subdued effort. She started sharing old family pictures on social media, always featuring me and always with the following captions. "I miss the days when family was the most important thing. A daughter's love is the most precious thing in the world. Once it might have worked. However, distance and therapy had helped me to see things clearly. Love and reconciliation were not the subject of these posts. Their goal was to control the story. About keeping one's face intact. As the deadline drew near, 3 weeks after the demand letter, my father texted me. "We must get together. Every one of us. This has sufficiently advanced." I consented to a meeting after speaking with Jessica and Dr. Laura, but only on the following terms. The meeting had to take place in a private room at a nearby restaurant, be neutral, last no more than an hour, and not include any talk of rescinding the legal demand. I'd take David with me. The meeting was set for the next Saturday afternoon after my father reluctantly agreed to the stipulations. David reached over and squeezed my hand as we drove to the restaurant. He reminded them that you were no longer the same person they could control. You've gained strength. I nodded, finding solace in his quiet assurance. All I want is for this to be settled so that we can live our lives on. David reassured me that we were already making progress, regardless of what transpired inside. That cannot be taken from you unless you allow it. Having been strengthened by those remarks, I entered the restaurant prepared to confront my family and maintain my integrity despite their attempts to distort it. The tension in Riverside Grill's private dining room seemed out of proportion to its size. On one side of the table were my parents. On the other side are Ashley and Michael. In order to form a triangle of opposing forces, David and I chose the other side. First to speak, my father put on his best businessman's hat. The goal of this conference is to find a solution that benefits all parties. The attorney was unneeded and provocative. I disagree, I quietly said. I attempted to speak with you both personally about this. You disregarded my worries and denied that there was a debt, which we all know to be genuine. We didn't deny, my mom started. Sliding copies of my father's emails across the table, I interrupted her. You implied that I forced you to sign. You suggested that the contract was invalid. Following 3 years of consistent payments, you claimed it was a gift. I'm not sure what denial is if that isn't it. With a grim expression, Michael leaned forward. Emily, you must comprehend the strain our parents are currently experiencing. They're helping us bridge the gap, Michael said, referring to the short-term cash flow problems caused by my company's restructuring. I fully comprehend, I reassured him. You fail to realize that I have no control over their financial decisions. You don't have either. So you'd want to watch your nephew and niece suffer, Ashley interrupted, her tone brimming with condemnation. David, who had been quiet up until now, opened his mouth. Aside from Emily, who has continuously been undervalued by this family, nobody is suffering here. Your kids go to a private school. Your house is worth $1 million. You skipped our wedding in favor of a lavish Hawaiian trip. The majority of people define privilege as what you consider to be suffering. My dad's face flushed. You don't have the right to talk to us like this. It is a family issue. I firmly stated, David is my family. The family I have selected. The relatives who come to see me. With tears in her eyes, my mother emphasized, we've always been there for you. We have been there for you no matter what. When? I put up a challenge. When did you ever put me before Michael? When was the last time you acknowledged my accomplishments without contrasting them with his? Have you ever respected my decisions before? My questions lingered in the air, and the room fell silent. At last, Michael's voice was unusually quiet. You mean they took out a loan from you? Startled, I turned to face him. 3 years ago, when they were in danger of going into foreclosure, I gave them a loan of $25,000. That's what the whole thing is about. Michael appeared truly perplexed. You gave them a $25,000 loan? I was unaware of that. I spoke carefully and continued, they told me they asked you first, but you couldn't help because of your expenses. As he turned to face our parents, my brother's look changed from one of perplexity to rage. You informed me that you obtained a home equity loan. You never mentioned taking a loan from Emily. Everything was verified by the look my parents exchanged. They had misled both of us, claiming to have gotten bank finance and to have approached Michael first. My dad told Michael, we didn't want to worry you. We borrowed from Emily because you were occupied with Olivia's school-related problems at the time. On the pay of a nurse, Michael gave a disbelieving shake of his head. And now you're helping me out with the money you should be giving her back. It's difficult, my mother said feebly. No, it's not complicated at all, Michael retorted. It's incorrect. The whole dynamic of the room changed as the disclosure was made. Michael was for the first time observing our parents' partiality from the outside, and realizing how unfair it was. "You ought to have informed me," he added. "If I had known that your assistance would come at Emily's expense, I would never have accepted it." My father made an effort to take back the conversation. "The key is that we must come up with a solution that benefits everyone. Maybe a new payment schedule." "The point," I cut in, "is that you took out a loan with certain conditions attached to it. Instead of fulfilling your commitment after you've missed several payments, you attempted to deceive and manipulate me into completely forgetting about it." "That's unfair," my mom said. "Missing your daughter's wedding and then expecting her to pay for your lifestyle choices is unfair," David remarked softly. For another uncomfortable half-hour, the meeting went on. Their position gradually deteriorated as Michael persisted in siding with me instead of our parents. In the end, my father consented to return to the initial payment plan and make up the payments that were missed within 60 days. His pride was obviously hurt, but he answered stiffly, "I'll put it in writing." I agreed, keeping the professional distance that appeared to be the only healthy way to communicate with them at the moment. "That would be best." Michael drew me aside as we were about to depart. His voice was low as he added, "I had no idea. Concerning the loan, or frankly any of it, how you've been handled by them. The wedding. Everything." I looked at my brother's face and saw sincere remorse. "At last," I responded, "I believe you. However, that doesn't alter what took place." "No," he concurred. "It doesn't. However, it might alter the course of events." My parents cooperated with the conditions we had established during the ensuing weeks. Regular monthly payments were resumed after the overdue amounts were deposited. In a tone of icy professionalism that was, to be honest, a comfort after years of manipulating my emotions, my father sent all correspondence through Jessica. Surprisingly, Michael started contacting people on his own. He first sent little texts to check in, and then he invited David and me to join him, Ashley, and the kids for lunch. Although awkward, the lunch was polite. Michael made a conscious attempt to inquire about my job and the status of our housing search. David and I came to a decision as the funds from the loan's repayment piled up in our account. Instead of keeping it for ourselves, we set up a scholarship fund for patient advocacy-focused nursing students. Converting money that had brought so much suffering into something that could lead to opportunity and healing felt natural. We closed on our new house 3 months after our family's argument. It's a lovely 3-bedroom bungalow with a fenced backyard, ideal for the kids we intend to have in the future. I experienced a deep sense of calm as we started furnishing the house and settling in. Without the burden of duties and expectations that had never worked for me, we were creating our life on our own terms. I never would have imagined that my relationship with my parents would develop into a tight, precisely defined bond founded on respect for one another rather than emotional attachment. They sent a card even though they weren't invited to our housewarming party. It was a modest act that would have been unnoticed from anybody else, but it was a major step forward for them. Michael, for his part, started the gradual process of considering his own involvement in the dysfunction in our family. He acknowledged on a rare coffee date that was just the two of us. I never asked why I consistently received more. It was simpler to think I somehow earned it. I explained to him that privilege operates in this way. Those who possess it cannot see it. Slowly, he nodded. "I'm working on improving my relationship with Olivia and Noah, ensuring they comprehend that value isn't determined by status or accomplishment." It was a beginning. Not precisely forgiveness, but a space for something fresh to emerge. I found out I was pregnant 6 months after our wedding. Questions about how to include my family hampered the happiness that David and I were experiencing. Following extensive deliberation and consulting with Dr. Laura, we established unambiguous guidelines. They may become grandparents, but only if they consistently treated us with respect and recognized our parenting choices. When we broke the news to my parents, I assured them, our child will never feel ranked or valued based on achievements. They will be loved just the way they are without conditions. My mom looked very touched. "I want to improve," she muttered. with your kid, alongside you. I reminded her that actions speak louder than words. That is what I will be keeping an eye out for. My parents did not assume the right to be present when our daughter, Lily, was born the following spring. Instead, they waited to be invited to visit. Instead of the ostentatious displays they had displayed with Michael's children, they brought thoughtful, inexpensive gifts. Little steps, but significant ones. The ability to define family according to my own standards has been the most valuable gift I have received from this challenging path. Our lives are still blessed by David's parents, who demonstrate to Lily what unwavering grandparent love looks like. There is a sense of belonging and support among my coworkers at the hospital, especially Linda, who was named Lily's honorary grandmother. Sarah, who supported me through every hardship, is now my steadfast friend and Lily's godmother. She recently told me, "You taught me what it means to stand up for yourself." That example is fortunate for your daughter. I have no idea how my relationship with my parents may develop in the future. Certain wounds fully recover. Others inflict wounds that alter our way of being in the world. I am aware that I have ended a cycle that might have persisted for many generations. My daughter will learn as she grows up that her intrinsic worth is independent of rivalry or comparison. She will never be at the bottom of anything, least of all the affection from her family. Please know that you deserve more if you're viewing this and dealing with familial relationships that make you feel less valuable. Establishing boundaries is essential for your well-being and is not selfish. Additionally, the family you build via love and choice might occasionally be more supportive than the one you were born into. Please share your ideas in the comments section. Have you ever had to confront family members who were disrespectful to you? When others wouldn't value you, how did you find the strength to do so? And that's the thing, sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't a dramatic confrontation or getting even. It's choosing peace, setting clear boundaries, and living a life that reflects your worth. Healing, growing, and protecting your joy, that's how you rise above the hurt. If you've been through something similar, family betrayal, emotional injustice, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. What helped you move forward? Let's create a space for healing and real conversation. Because in the end, how we choose to grow after the pain says more than any revenge ever could. What does rising above look like for you?